Hello and welcome. My name is Peace Mitchell and I'm co-founder of Women Changing the World Press, Osmompreneur and the Women's Business School. Before I begin today, I would like to pay my respects to the traditional owners of the land that I live and work on, the Mamu people. And I'd like to pay my respects to traditional owners and elders past and present right across Australia and the Torres Strait. Today, it is my great pleasure to launch our brand new book, Women Leading the Way. Today, we have a very special session with some of the authors of this book who I'll be chatting to and hearing a bit more about each of their chapters and the messages that they've shared in this book. So I would love to begin by welcoming our very first guest today, Amy Jackson. Amy, please join me on stage.
Hi, Peace.
Hi, Amy. How are you?
Oh, fabulous. Thank you. So excited. It's launch day.
Yes, it's so exciting. So exciting. So, Amy, I'd love you to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about who you are for people who haven't met you before.
I'm Amy Jackson. I'm a leadership coach and I'm based up in Brisbane and I run my own business called Nurture and Confidence. And so I specialize in helping people to make the transition from whatever it is that has been holding them back, especially at work, in stepping up into become leaders through not suddenly becoming confident, but figuring out all the little tools that let them be just confident enough to take the first step in.
Oh, I love that.
Because it's in that first step that the confidence grows. Yeah. Just confident enough.
So your chapter is called Confident Enough to Lead the Way. And I love your opening statement because it's something that I really relate to. And I know that a lot of the women who are watching and who'll be reading this book relate to. And in your opening sentence, you say, it's 3 a.m., my heart is racing, and I'm convinced I can't do it. Can you tell us why you opened with that statement, Amy?
I think it resonates with so many of us, and it's real. Yeah. So often when people come and start speaking with me, it's the 3 o'clock in the morning that's becoming so painful that they want to do something about it. And it's the 3 o'clock in the morning that for me is the bit where when I let that bit get out of the way, everything else becomes exhausting, right? Because without the sleep, it's impossible to choose to do the hard things every day. And so that moment of, for me, in the moments when I recognize it's 3 a.m. and I'm awake again, it's when I recognize that I'm not doing something in my confidence practice that needs a bit of attention, because I'm suddenly there again going, oh, I'm not sure if I can do this, and telling myself that story over and over and over again. I don't know if I can. And that's exhausting, let alone the 3 o'clock wake.
It is. And I wonder, do you think that those self-doubts and that barrier to confidence is something that's holding women back from achieving more in their life?
Absolutely. It holds us back. And I think it feels like it's something we'll either never get rid of, or even that we have to get rid of it in order to then be able to do the things we need to do. And I think that expectation of, I can't do the hard things until that story is not going on, is part of what holds us back. That story doesn't go away. We just get better at going, I see your story, thanks, and I'm going to do this thing anyway. And so I'm trying to help us change the relationship with that story rather than go, that's never going to be there anymore.
That's so interesting. When you talk about the fact that that kind of doubt holds us back, but the fear that we can only do things once we've got rid of that doubt altogether. That's really interesting on this, because the reality is that doubt will kind of always be there in some form or another. We'll get better with dealing with it, but it doesn't actually disappear altogether, and that's normal.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those unrealistic expectations that we have of women, that we're really going to get there, that, and when we tell ourselves that I'm going to reach a point where there is no self-doubt, then that judgment of ourselves keeps replaying. Because if you think about it, every time we get more confident by doing things we're not confident in, right? And then if we're women trying to lead the way, we're going to keep going, oh, what can I do next? And every time I put myself in the next, I suddenly go, oh, my confidence is gone again because I'm expecting that the self-doubt is gone forever. But now I'm in something new where I don't know how to do it. The confidence is not there. If I'm expecting that self-doubt is gone, then I'm going to get trapped back in judgment again. Whereas if I'm recognizing that, oh, that's just a thing. That's a thing right now. Okay, I'm back there. I need to bring out some more tools again. Then I'm going to change how much I keep stepping up to leading something new. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. And I love that you talk about, okay, I'm going to bring back those tools, because I think what I've experienced and what I've heard from other women is that each time we try something new and we take that, that big step into a bigger version of ourselves and something we want to achieve, that all of that doubt comes for us then. So we're going along quite well when we're plateauing at this same level, but when we take a big step. And I know for me, that happened when I did my first TED Talk. I was not expecting that, but all of the, like, who am I to do a TED Talk? Like, I've done so much speaking. Why was it different? Because it was a TED Talk. I don't know, but all the doubt came from me. And I think if we develop those tools, then that's what we can rely on when it comes time to do those big things.
Yeah, and I kind of think about it as so much more empowering than confidence as a destination, because it's like I don't need to have the feeling of confidence every moment. I need to make sure my toolkit is packed full of practical things that in the moments that I don't feel confident enough plays out, whether you're on the red circle, or you're somewhere else, suddenly on a panel live, whatever it is, those tools are there. And I think that's empowering to go, okay, which one do I need in this moment, rather than it being something that I have to have suddenly become.
Yeah. And you talk about some of those tools in your chapter. And one of the things that you spoke about, which is what I tapped into when I was doing my TED Talk, was about the fact that you have to know your intention. And so for me, having that intention and knowing that I was doing something not just for me, but for my community, was something that did help me tap into that confidence. What are some of the other things that you talk about as tools that can help you get through those moments?
Yeah, it's gorgeous. So the intention is one of mine, and one that I have to keep. I like to write it down whenever I'm about to do something hard, just to go, why is this worth doing? And really quickly write that down. My other go-to ones that I've included there, my favorites, my top favorite is the deep breath, partly because we know that it works. It's always available to us. Partly because my mum used to always tell me to take a deep breath, and that, it's Mother's Day yesterday, so happy Mum Day to everyone. But that, there's something very nourishing about that connection with breath in that moment. And it helps us to appear so much more confident as well when we take that deep breath. The other one for me that I talk about a bit in the chapter that we don't often pay attention to, I think, is building our own awareness over what me not confident versus me confident looks like. So that, because we've got this kind of image in our heads, or this stereotype of what a confident person should look like. And it's not me at my confident best. When I started to have a really clear understanding of what I looked like, felt like, thought about when I was feeling confident enough to step in, then in the moments that I'm not, I suddenly have access to that other version of me, because I at least have a really clear sense of what that looks like. So helping women to understand, how do I notice when I'm in the not confident space? Because when I'm there, I don't have much awareness that I'm there. I just start telling myself the story. But if I can see it, then I can have a bit of objective distance to it. And so then I can go, oh, I don't want to be in that state right now. I want to be in this state. How do I get into that state for me?
That's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. The other thing that you talked about, which I loved, was that you say, I see you. Can you tell us what that means?
Yeah, I do. This idea comes from I first came across it in some of Russ Harris's work, so from the acceptance and commitment therapy space. But it's such a tiny, short technique that is super handy. And so it's basically recognizing that story that I'm not confident enough in our heads is just a story, and that it's my brain trying to protect me from something scary. Yeah, so if we're trying to lead the way, we're going to keep putting ourselves in situations where it's socially exposing to do that. Yeah. And there's really good reasons why our brain's going, don't go there, Amy, that's scary, don't do it. Yeah, people might not like you, because it's my brain's job to protect me. And so instead of arguing with that and resist it, I'm trying to change the conversation with it in my head to go, yeah, I see you, brain, thank you for trying to protect me, and it's worth doing, we're going to do it anyway.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love the way that you've reframed that, and yeah, just that noticing that it's there, and that it's okay, I can see you, but we're doing this now. I think that switch that.
Yeah, and it's a bit of playful lightness in something that's so heavy, right? We go to heavy so quickly when we're in that not confident space, right? When we're in that, who am I to put myself out in front to show others how? It feels heavy, it feels responsible, and the emotional experience of that feels really heavy. And so for me, part of that, I see you, thanks brain, is bringing lightness and playfulness in that moment that, you know, kind of shifts our brain state in that moment as well.
Yeah. Well, I love that. And thank you so much for your chapter. I know that our readers will love reading this and getting those tips about how to step into leadership in a really confident way. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Peace. It's a joy to get to talk to you. Confident enough to take the first step.
Yes, we've got this.
We've got this, ladies.
I'd now like to welcome our next author to join me on stage, Julie Okely. Hello, Julie. Julie, you're just on mute there.
Thank you for that. Yama, peace. How are you in the warm part of top part of Australia? Good?
Yes, I'm really good. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Really excited about women changing the world and the way and everything we do. It's great.
Yeah, well, it's wonderful to have you here, Julie. For people who haven't met you before, I'd love you to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about you and the work that you do.
Thank you. I'm a proud Kamilaroi woman working on Ngunnawal land. So I thank my Ngunnawal elders for accepting me on this beautiful community. And I am a serial entrepreneur who loves doing anything that helps my Indigenous community. And we have just launched an amazing project called All First Nations, which is the largest portal in Australia for Indigenous peoples to come together on and have every Indigenous product, service and business and everything on this platform. And yeah, so basically I've been blessed with writing my own books, contributing to Pieces, Wonderful, Osmums and publications, which is really exciting. And I have my own brand of products, hair and skincare, called Dilkara as well.
Yeah, so Julie, your chapter was really about time travel and looking at history through a different lens. Can you tell us a bit about your chapter?
Well, I basically wanted people that read, well, especially the women that read, from another female perspective on if you were to go back in time and reassess different things that you felt were threatened in the past and absolutely challenged your hierarchy of needs, which is based on Maslow's theory, and you basically can turn around and say, okay, well, what would I have done differently in that space? And I wanted to take people back to when, Australia was first colonised and what the actual experience of First Nations peoples were as a base storyline. But this is also about our personal storyline of looking at like how our needs are threatened with psychological needs, emotional needs, self-esteem, and to basically come through the other end and have those nice self-actualization moments where we can actually aim for what we want, where we want to go, and know that we can achieve it.
And you talk about history a lot in your chapter. Why is it important for us to recognize history and understand things that have happened in the past?
Well, one of the points that I brought up was quite a large piece of, niggle that sat with me. It really niggled me. And it was that any major conflict that's happened in the world has been led by generally one person. And whether it's been a peace protest, whether it's been war, whether it's been anarchy, whether it's been success in economics, it really doesn't matter what happens. It generally has a leader on top. And we need to actually identify how they lead. And we need to actually sit back and say, okay, well, do we follow this leader? Is this the way we want our future to unfold? So I think the thing is engagement with people around us and engagement with our leaders and believing in our group of people that we follow. They basically create the fundamental layers of who we are and what our futures are going to be.
And I think ourselves as leaders and women as leaders, we've got a huge responsibility.
We actually do. We actually do. That's a fantastic point, Peace, because, you know, at the end of the day, I have this self-belief that women lead the households, women lead the families, women lead the budgets, women, you know, are strong. And I think we need to start believing in ourselves more and really looking at how we can actually create our own narrative and start changing the way things happen in our lives, how we manifest things, how we actually can go back in time. Because I referenced Sliding Doors and the movie with Gwyneth Paltrow, and I was like, well, look at how her life was paralleling with different storylines in that moment of time, with that sliding door moment. And I think we need to sit back and think, you know, like, am I getting the best out of my life? Am I doing what I want to achieve? Am I following the right person? Am I with the right person? And how do I stand in my own strength?
And for you personally, Julie, I mean, you talk about the loss of your mother when you were 9. I can only imagine the impact that has had on you and you stepping into your leadership. Do you believe that moments like that really are, you know, make or break moments for people?
Oh, definitely. I think back, you know, I'm in my early 50s now, but like 40 years ago, to lose a parent, there weren't anywhere near the resources around that there are today for children of loss. And I was in a situation where my father wasn't able to care for us. So we potentially were going to become wards of the state. So we actually really had nowhere to go until my paternal parents stepped up and basically said, well, we'll take my sister and I in. And that was a huge change. We went from the city to the country, so we had to understand lifestyle changes. We didn't have access to any facilities as far as mental health, emotional evolution of, like, basically just trying to sort of rebuild our confidence again, different things like that. We just went on with living. And I think in many cases there is a lot of trauma that sits within that. And I think that as women in those type of situations, whether we lose a parent, whether we lose a partner, whether we actually separate, we really need to be strong and really think about, you know, what the past has brought us to, but also looking at where we can go with the future and how we can actually evolve through these changes and challenges. And I think women are so resilient. They're amazing people. Like, we've got these beautiful emotional hormones and these intuitions and these triggers that tell us, this doesn't actually feel right. And I think the thing is, we do need to rely on our gut a lot more. And we need to look back where we're going and where we've been and really assess things and sit there and just go, okay, where do I want to be? What do I want to achieve out of this life that I've been given? And I think that's super important, because we are worthy. We are so worthy as women, and we are powerful women. We're powerful creatures. And, you know, I believe in spirit and I believe in ancestral spirit. We actually had a smoking ceremony last night here at my house to actually give me strength to actually present today. And that was so important to me. And you bring in the elders and the spirits, and you bring in protection and love and care and direction. And this is the whole thing that we need to really understand, is that we don't stand alone. You know, we do have people around us. We have our ancestors around us. We have our sisters and brothers around us. Our extended families are sometimes so much more supportive than our biological ones. But we have to recognise that we're worthy. And that's the biggest thing that I really wanted to actually look at, that people assess, like these women assess where they're at, where they're going, and look at the past, but really get excited about the future and where they can go.
Yeah. Oh, I love all of that so much, Julie. I love that you're talking about that connection that you have to your culture and your history and your ancestors, and that's all within you. Yeah, and leading from a place of knowing that you're not alone. You've got all of that behind you and within you and supporting you and guiding you all the time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have, you know, within our culture, just talking about that, we have women's business, and women's business is so important. And I'm often looking towards my aunties for guidance. And anything I do, I actually like look at getting permission from my Ngunnawal elders to do that on their land. And I think that's the biggest thing we need to understand. It's not about us making money doing business and everything like that and engaging with networks. It's about us going to the elders and saying, hi, I'm Julie, I'm here, I'm, you know, a Camilla person. If not, I'm from Brisbane. Do you mind if I do business on your land? Is that okay? You know, and to know that you've been accepted and acknowledged by the elders and you've been given permission to do that. It's like you've walked into someone's house, let alone on their land. And in their house, we're actually we're trading and we're working with their permission. And there is a certain amount of nourishment and guidance to the soul that actually helps that. You know, that's so important to have the recognition of the elders.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Really beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Julie. I really enjoyed your chapter, and I know our readers will as well. Women Leading the Way is available online now to pre-order. Thank you so much for being here, Julie, and I hope everyone runs out and grabs a copy of Women Leading the Way to read your chapter.
Thank you very much. Thanks everyone.
Julie. I'd now like to welcome our next guest to join me, Niti. Please join me on stage.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you, Peace?
Yeah, really good. So for people who haven't met you before, I would love you to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about you and the work that you do.
Yeah, sure. So I do a number of things actually, but my principal thing is being a coach, and I help coach women who are kind of feeling a little bit stuck in their careers, sort of at that point where they've been perhaps doing the same thing for a number of years. They're feeling a little bit disillusioned, a little bit lost, not sure where to go next, perhaps telling themselves they're too old or it's too late to do something different. And so I help women who are in that position to get unstuck from that position by connecting with themselves. Because I think we often look for answers external to ourselves, right? In our surroundings, in the people around us, we seek advice from other people. But the answers really lie within us. And when we can really connect with who we are and what we really want and what we're passionate about, I think that's when we can truly move forward in life and really get unstuck. So that's the main thing I do, but I'm also a diversity, equity, inclusion consultant. I'm very soon launching my consulting practice, which is going to be working with essentially law firms and other legal teams. That's my background, my professional background, and so I want to give back in that area and really support these organisations to take DEI work and translate it from, I guess, the cosmetic changes we often see to real deep systemic cultural change within their organisations. So that's me.
I love that. I love that. Your chapter is actually called A Journey Back to Self, and I can see the evolution of your career path is kind of, you're bringing it all together. But let's talk about your chapter. You talk about your pomegranate tree in the chapter and use that as a metaphor for your journey. Can you tell us a bit about your pomegranate tree?
Yeah, sure. I've got this pomegranate tree that's literally outside where I sit and do my work. So it's in the backyard. And over the years, so when we moved in to the house when we bought, this tree was there, and it said it was a pomegranate tree. And so I kept looking for these pomegranates year after year after year. And we never got any pomegranates. We got beautiful flowers every so often, but no fruit. And I got to a point where I'd given up on ever seeing fruit on the tree. And I thought, you know what, this is just going to be a pretty tree. It's going to be pink. during the summer months, and that's going to be beautiful, but I'm never ever going to see any fruit on it, so I might as well give up looking. And it was really the year that I gave up looking that I went outside one day with my son, and I was like, what is that on the tree? That doesn't look like flower. And I saw some pomegranates. And the reason I use this metaphor is it kind of felt to me like a really good metaphor for my career. I'd been going along my career going, do you know what, there's something missing. Maybe one day I'll do something different. I'll go back and reactivate that passion I have for human rights work and social justice work and things like that. But I'd kind of given up. I'd kind of gone, do you know what, I'm resigned to being, a general counsel in an organisation, and I think that's how I'm going to retire one day, and that's just what I'm going to do. And do you know what, I don't need to be, extraordinarily happy in my career. It's, it's a job. I'd sort of gotten to that point. And it was during, I think, the pandemic that things, and it wasn't just because of the pandemic, but I think there were things going on during that period of time that made me sort of reflect a lot more deeply on actually, what do I really want? And do I want this to be what I'm doing the day I retire? Or do I actually want to be able to do more, give more, be more in this world? And what does that potentially look like? And so, I finally did see some fruit on my pomegranate tree. It's, it's now a beautiful, tree that gives us quite a bit of fruit every year and has done for the last 2 years. And so timing wise as well, it's kind of coincided with my journey into doing something a little bit different and a little bit more passion infused.
Yeah, I love that. You talk about the fact that, your work was satisfying, but it wasn't necessarily fulfilling. So, it wasn't so bad that you desperately needed to quit and do something else. You could have kept going with it. And I think that a lot of people are like that. They're in jobs that, it pays them and it's okay, but they're not actually, it doesn't light them up anymore, and they're not fulfilled. But you talk about motherhood in your chapter and how that was quite a turning point for you.
Yeah, I think there were a number of things around motherhood that really changed things for me. I think firstly, the first time around when I had my daughter, it really woke me up to the fact that actually things do change career-wise when you have kids. And I'd been quite naive before having kids and just assumed that, things would go back to the way they were when I returned to work, and, I just carry on with my career and, everything would be exactly the same. And it wasn't quite like that when I returned to work. And so I really did find myself going, actually, do you know what, there is real bias out there. And no matter how good you are at what you do, the bias can affect you, whether it's through flexibility bias or, proximity bias or, anything else. So I think that was a big turning point for me. And then across that journey, I also had a few pregnancy losses that, were really quite traumatic for me personally, and made me think quite differently about vulnerability and the need to actually talk about what you're feeling and how you're feeling. And that for me was a big thing when I did get to the pandemic and I started sharing my stories. I really lent into that side of my own vulnerability and talking about these things that really matter to me, like gender equity, gender bias, like pregnancy loss. And so, I think all of these things combined, plus then having my rainbow baby after that, just before the pandemic hit, and being a senior female, mum with 2 kids during the pandemic, just made me think really differently about what it is that I really care about, what it is I really love talking about, what are the issues that really matter to me, and the fact that actually I don't want to leave this world feeling that I didn't do the things or make a difference in the areas that do really matter to me. Like, that's something that's now really important to me, having a daughter, and obviously my son as well, but having a daughter, like, I actually want her to know that her mum is doing things to make this place a better place for her and for other girls around the world. And so, as I often say now, making a change in this world is now non-negotiable. to me. Like it's one of my non-negotiables. Like I have to do it no matter what. So, you know, yeah, so it has really changed me quite significantly.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you talk about the fact that LinkedIn has been a big part of your process, and it's enabled you to share your voice with a much wider audience than before. And that your message resonated with others. And so that's been really powerful as well.
Yeah, it has. It actually took me by surprise. You know, I mean, if someone had said to me 5 years ago I'd be as active on a social media platform as I am today, I would have laughed at them and said there's no way, and they didn't really know me. Perhaps I didn't know myself. But, you know, it's really been quite amazing. Like I found through the pandemic, you know, especially living in Melbourne, because, you know, that we were going through so many lockdowns and things. And I just returned from parental leave, literally as we went into our first lockdown, with a baby and a 6-year-old, you know, doing remote learning. I just felt really disconnected from not just the world, but also my workplace, because I hadn't seen people for such a long time. And I really turned to this platform less as a way to share things with the broader world, but more as a way to replace the water cooler chat. And oddly, because I'm not, you know, I consider myself to be somewhere in the middle of the extrovert, introvert sort of spectrum. Writing on LinkedIn feels weirdly comfortable, I think, because you're writing and then it just goes out and then people respond and then you can process what they've said and then you can respond again. So it's not like you're responding real time as you are, say, in a networking event in person, right? And so for me, being on this platform felt oddly comfortable and oddly safe. And so I just started talking about things. And, you know, as I got more and more comfortable with it, which I think, you know, happens over time, I started sharing more and more stories. And, you know, and I always start with story because, you know, I guess my motto when it comes to LinkedIn is, you know, I only know my stories and I can only share my own perspective. I can share my perspective in a way that helps other people and potentially resonates with other people, but it is still my story and it is still my perspective. And so despite what some of the LinkedIn gurus will tell you about, you know, never using the word I use the word I a lot in my writing. And it's because they're my stories, right? They're my perspectives, my views. And it has really helped me. It's helped me build a platform where, you know, I've got this really amazing community. A lot of the opportunities I've now had and which have, you know, enabled me to take these next steps and do something different in my life have come from this beautiful community that I've built online. And so it's truly been transformative, I think, having that community and that platform for me.
Yeah. Oh, it's so beautiful. You talk about possibility. And I think, you know, when you were in your career before, where just turning up every day, doing the same thing, you were kind of blinkered to the possibilities that are out there. But you've been on this entire journey where, you know, you're starting to see that anything's possible and all kinds of possibilities are out there.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I think it's one of the things I often tell, you know, or speak to women about when I'm coaching them is when we are in a certain path, we're so focused on the path that the things that sit outside the path or off the ladder, let's say, because we're often climbing a ladder, right? Metaphorically speaking. But the things that are off the ladder or off that path are often, we're not able to see them because we're so focused on climbing or keeping on walking down this path. And I think sometimes the best thing we can do for ourselves is step off that ladder, step off that path, look at the scenery around us and really spend some time working out, well, hang on, how do I want to walk this path? How do I want to climb this ladder? What are the things that will support me to climb or to walk this path? And perhaps there's a fork in the road. Perhaps it's not a ladder. You know, I mean, my most recent metaphor with the ladder has been turning the ladder into a beanstalk, you know, and the reason I say that is because often, you know, we think about a ladder, it's quite linear, but the ladder's been built by someone else. It's been built by a system, right? And so if we can instead think of planting a seed and creating our own beanstalk, which has branches that go off to the sides, and, you know, we build it and we create it, we nurture it, with the things that matter to us. I think that's a more useful metaphor to use for the way you carry out your journey through your career.
I love that so much. I love that. I love your metaphors, Niti. Thank you so much. Thank you. And everyone needs to grab a copy of this book and read Niti's chapter in here about her journey back to self and coming unstuck and all of the lessons she's learned along the way. It's a wonderful chapter. So thank you so much for being here. And thank you for your chapter, Niti. It's been wonderful chatting.
Thank you.
I'd now like to welcome our next guest on stage, Dr. Olivia. Please join me.
Hi, Peace. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
So, Dr. Olivia, for people who haven't met you before, I would love you to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about you.
Yeah, sure. So, my name is Dr. Olivia Ong, and I'm a pain physician here in Melbourne, Australia. That's my main principle of work. And I wear many hats as well. I'm the founder of Heart-Centered Method Institute, which is a coaching and education company to help doctors thrive after burnout. And I'm also the director of Heart-Centered Books, where I've published a nonfiction book and a children's book. So I'm very excited. That's a legacy business that I have with my kids and the husband. So it's it's something that we do together as a family, writing books and promoting our books. And I'm also a peak performance leadership coach for doctors as well, just to help them get their energy back after burnout, helping them perform to the highest, performance level. And I'm a professional speaker as well. I speak in the area of doctors' health and well-being, and I've been invited in multiple healthcare events, speaking about doctors' health, burnout, and resilience. And I'm a mom of 2 kids, and that's pretty busy already, I think.
Yeah. Yes, pretty busy, pretty busy. So your chapter is called Intuition in Leadership. Yeah. But I want to talk about, in your opening statement of your chapter, you talk about the fact that you've come to understand that lots of people are paralyzed and limit their ability to live a happy and fulfilled life. And that you were completely unaware that you were paralyzed as well until you had your accident. So can you tell us what that means?
Yeah, of course I will, Peace. So with that that's mainly an observation I made. For those who are not aware about for many of people who are not aware about my background story. So 15 years ago, when I was a resident doctor, I was hit by a car, and that rendered me a paraplegic. So I had a very serious spinal cord injury and was paralyzed from the waist down. So for those early years since the injury, I was quite miserable. I was really unhappy, angry, basically going through the stages of grief. But as I healed through that medical trauma, I found happiness within through self-compassion, which I've written in Hello, Happy, Goodbye, Busy. In that particular book, if you want to get that, that's fine too. But this is kind of like the next phase or the next observation I've sensed. And I kept looking around me why I was so happy despite being in a wheelchair, and why a lot of people were still unhappy. And I realized, that's where I made that connection. Like perhaps they're kind of stuck in this invisible wheelchair that they can't see, and so I wrote that down mainly as an observation because I still see it up to this day. And the wheelchair used to be my enemy, but now it's my friend. Like I use it a lot when I go shopping with the kids. When I go to the airport for long distance travel, I use it, and I don't hate it anymore. It actually, I was able to kind of travel around Europe and America in the wheelchair, and I was happy with that. Like, you get to actually slow down and still admire the beautiful things in this world, in this universe. So so that's how the observation came about, Peace, about that particular statement.
And you talk about how you're happy and fulfilled, but there's other people who are living a very kind of unhappy life and unfulfilled life, and they're stuck and they can't move past that. But your journey, you know, you had to relearn how to walk and do things again.
Mm.
I think it changed who you are. Would that be true?
Yeah, it sure did. I went through a personal transformation because of my injury. It's what psychologists call post-traumatic growth. That's the kind of the medical label or statement, I guess. But to me, I got to realize I went through 3 stages of transformation in myself. I developed self-awareness. I went, okay, so this is what I've got a spinal cord injury. That's nothing I can do about it, but I can do the best I can to help me recover and, you know, walk again. And acceptance was I think the lead up from awareness to acceptance was really hard because I was angry. I was angry at the person who hit me with his car and all these things, and finally accepted it as it is. Like, this is the injury, and, you know, I have to kind of live with it and, you know, like maximize whatever resources I have to get back to walking, and that's what I did. And I think the last stage, which is appreciation or gratitude, is when you look back and you go, yeah, the injury happened for a reason. If the injury didn't happen, I wouldn't have my kids. It'll be maybe different kids. I don't know. I've never ever thought of that. But different kids, I never would have led this beautiful life I have so far. Like being able to connect with you, Peace, and Katie, and Osmanpreneurs, and many other wonderful entrepreneurs in various communities, which I thrive on my connections with. I think that wouldn't happen if the injury didn't happen. A lot of things wouldn't have happened if the injury didn't happen, basically. So appreciation is that where you have gained all that learning and all that wisdom from all the failures, disappointments, rejections. It leads to this point, you see. So that's how I see it, of the personal transformation I went through, and I kind of wrote it in this chapter as well, trying to kind of summarize all that transformation I had.
Yeah. And you talk about intuition in your chapter as well, how following your intuition really helped you to make big changes along the way and, you know, make decisions that were right for you. Can you tell us about intuition?
Yeah, absolutely. In Goodbye Busy, Hello Happy, I wrote about self-compassion. That was one part. But I think another part that played a huge role in my recovery will be intuition. Because as a doctor, I've learned to I've learned to ignore it, basically, because I had a gut instinct this is what was going on with the patient, but I couldn't tell that to the head of surgery. Like, it's based on my gut instinct. There's no evidence. I think this person's got this condition. You know, I stifled down my intuition. And it was through my injury that I learned to I think intuition is a surrendering process, is letting go. And I had to let go of myself being an expert, I guess, you know, like I didn't need to be an expert anymore. Like, I'm not an expert in recovering from spinal cord injury, so I had to have a beginner's mind and all that. And a big part of intuition, I feel, is also imagination and visualization. That's a big part of intuition too. That's a lot of, I've done quite a fair bit of intuitive work, and that involves a lot of visualization and all that things. And I relied on that a lot in my recovery because I was paralyzed from the waist down. And I think a lot of Paralympians or athletes, and probably athletes as well, not just Paralympians, able-bodied athletes can relate. They do this process too. And I did that every day. Even though my legs were paralyzed, I just imagined myself walking. Every day I did that. And it was only through intuition I could do that. But obviously that took a bit of time to embrace intuition. It didn't come like easily, you know. It took, I rejected it a lot because I remember, like, I think a few months after my injury, people with spinal cord injuries, we are a very small community, and we talk to each other. We always find out about the latest treatments like stem cells or any way that we can return to any kind of walking. And they talked about this place called Project Walk, which is a spinal cord injury recovery center in San Diego. And my intuition was telling me, you got to go there. And I ignored it for a good year until, that's the thing about intuition. It will throw a lemon at you first, a shoe at you first, and then after that, it will elbow you big time. And I think I had the big elbow towards me a year later going, you have to go, come on, man. Like, and that's what happened. Yeah, I literally packed my bags and then relocated for 3 years in San Diego. And I got my mobility back because I listened to my intuition. And I think that's a big part of inner leadership, is to listen to your intuition as well. Like, that's where the that inner part of you that says, you got this, and you trust that. Yeah, it's just when you are able to rely on your intuition, you can be so much more creative, and that's so much needed in leadership these days too.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. I think we all have that intuition, that voice inside us that knows the right thing to do. But we also have that voice of self-doubt that Amy Jackson was talking about earlier. That's, telling us we're not good enough or we're not ready. How do we cope with both of those voices? How do we know which one's the right one to listen to?
I think with listening to, you have to kind of get used to the self-doubt, or I call it the imposter voice, because they're kind of the same. That voice that tells you that you're not good enough, you're not enough, and all that. I think with that kind of voice, it's actually recognizing that's an imposter voice and not your true voice. And then acknowledging its presence and using your own voice, inner voice, going, I've got this, thank you so much. It's actually just acknowledging the imposter voice. I feel that that's just having the awareness to do that is probably the first step. And the imposter voice is actually, it is a good thing. It's trying to protect you and keep you safe, ultimately. But yeah, just acknowledging it, telling it, or him or her, or whatever you want to, because you can name that voice. You can name him Fred or her Mary or whatever. Or I call that voice little Olivia. I don't know. That seems to help. I just tell the voice that I've got this. Thank you so much for protecting me. I think that helps. That just that's where the appreciation bit comes in. Yeah, that's how I deal with the self-doubt voice, because I know when it creeps out, I'm about to do something scary, like something that takes me out of my comfort zone. I recognize it a lot. It comes up very often sometimes when big things are happening. But I've learned to say, thank you so much for trying to help me out. Thank you.
And so for people who are wanting to tap into their intuition more, what can you recommend?
I think one of the other speakers talked about connecting to the breath. I think that's a really good part. Connecting with the breath is really fundamental. It's like the speaker said, it was very nourishing. And that's how you can tap into your intuition, is when you actually take the time to slow down and stop and pause, is when you can connect. So whatever meditative techniques that all of you are doing, like whether it's meditation or self-compassion break or just taking 3 deep breaths, that's connecting with intuition, because you're actually pausing and reflecting and connecting with your inner wisdom. So, yeah.
Oh, I love that so much. Well, I could keep talking with you all day, but we better keep going. Thank you so much for being here, Olivia. And I love your chapter in here. I hope everybody grabs a copy of the book. We will make sure that the link to order copies is in the comments, so you can grab your copy of Women Leading the Way. But thank you so much, Dr. Olivia. You've got an incredible story, and thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you, Peace. Thank you, everyone.
Well, now I'd like to welcome our final guest today. Sarah, please join me on stage. Please join me, Sarah.
Hi.
Hello, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. Nice to see you.
Yeah, wonderful to have you here, Sarah. So for people who haven't met you before, I would love you to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about you and the work that you do.
Absolutely, I would love to. So, hi everyone, my name is Sarah Cremona. I am the founder of the Mama Nest. The Mama Nest is a conscious motherhood coaching space. So I'm actually training as a birth trauma facilitator at the moment, and I run workshops in the wellness space. However, primarily the business is around educating mothers through embodiment practices and practical skills. So what that means is aligning someone's thoughts, feelings, and body sensations so that they can become more conscious about how they're living. And what this means is through creating more self-awareness, through curiosity and positive psychology tools, we allow women to really connect with themselves, to self-regulate, find balance, and really create self-acceptance. And I like to put it, quite simply and say it's a way for mothers to come home to themselves and live with purpose.
Yeah, it's beautiful work that you do, Sarah.
Thank
So
you.
your chapter was called Outward Bound. Can you tell us about your chapter?
Sure. So Outward Bound to me was really about when we're growing up, we're on the outward bound. So we're relying on those external forces to show us and share with us how the world is. And for me, it was really about kind of this journey from really the journey of self. So as a child, being innocent, whole, pure, just complete with light. It's like we know what our soul desires and what lights us up. But as we move on that outward bound, we lose our spark and our conditioning defines us because we don't know any better. And so, like I said, it's really about coming home to myself and learning to tap into those things that I loved as a child without even realizing it. And, you know, strangely, it's everything that I loved as a child, I'm now doing, but it just looks slightly different. And so, yeah, you know, people always said, find your passion. And then, you know, you'll never go wrong. You'll never work a day in your life. And I used to think, what on earth is passion? Like, that's just a crock. Like, that doesn't exist, but it does exist. It's just, you know, we have to become curious.
Because it can be hard to know what that thing is, can't it?
Absolutely. And I think, sorry, you go, Peace.
I was just going to say, and you talk about your journey in your chapter of how you came to finding your way and finding what your passion is and your purpose.
Absolutely. And I think some of the women have already spoken about how motherhood changes them. However, for me, experiencing birth trauma, becoming a mum of 3, it was from that moment that I left hospital and I was not okay. And I realized that there was a huge gap in the system. And there's such a gap of, you know, we wait until we need clinical care or a diagnosis to then seek help. And leaving hospital, I was not okay and I didn't know what to do. And it's kind of like we rely on so many other forces to share with us what to do, but we've forgotten how to connect with ourselves. So, you know, here we are as mothers, and the real importance of that is when we can do that, it changes our entire outer world, how we experience life, our relationships, how we manage our own selves, and how we connect with our children. And so that's the most important journey, I think, is really seeing those challenges that we go through as opportunity instead of allowing them to really define us. I think that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah. Wow, that's so powerful what you're saying. You know, we have lost that ability to connect with ourselves and to trust ourselves. And, you know, you talk about birth trauma, but in the olden days, we would give birth naturally. We'd have a doula with us. We'd be at home, but we've been taken out of that environment. We've been put into hospital environments. It's very sterile and clinical and unfamiliar. We're not told to trust ourselves. We're told to trust the medical staff and the obstetrician. And so a lot of our agency has been, you know, pushed away. We're told not to trust our bodies, our own intuition, and our own heart and what we believe, but to trust those external forces. And so is this the work that you are doing in bringing women back to that?
Yeah, and that you're exactly right, Peace. We really, without realizing, we've outsourced all of our power. So this is really about reclaiming motherhood on our terms, but yeah, really doing what works for us and understanding ourselves so we're not so reliant on those external factors.
And so in your chapter, you talk about this idea of being a perfect mother, that these external beliefs and, you know, pressure is expecting mothers to show up being perfect, otherwise we'll be criticized. But actually that puts a huge burden on mothers, particularly, you know, first-time mothers, mothers who don't have experience, women who are isolated, they don't have the support of the village around them and family. Can you talk to us about that and about your experience?
Yeah, so again, I think this comes back to that outward bound journey as well, because along the way we create stories from different things that happen to us, and they have so much meaning in how we live our lives. And I really think, for me in particular, there was one phrase I heard growing up, and that was, your reputation is everything. And I'm from a very small town, and, my parents owned a small business in town. So it was very important that we did the right thing. And, I think the meaning that I took on from that was that it mattered more to me what others thought about me than what I thought about myself. And I didn't realize this until, everything started to fall apart, and there was a lot of blame and resentment, and my relationships started to fall apart, and I was very much living in an avoidance state. So when things did get hard, I'd put up a wall, and all I would show to the world was the perfect, everything is fine, everything is beautiful, but inside I was suffering, I was hurting. And I just didn't realize the power of the meaning that we give so many things in our lives and how they affect us. So really, yeah. And, there's this common phrase that we hear a lot, oh, you're a super mum, and I hate it, because it's really minimizing of the experience, and it's really putting that pressure on mums to be and do and have everything. And it's just not okay. It's so damaging.
Yeah.
It's like we're constantly striving for, for this success that we don't even know how to measure that success. It's like that constant chasing.
Yeah. And so the work you do with women is about supporting them through that and helping them to recognize that it doesn't have to be that way.
It's really giving them that power back for themselves to take control of their inner state, to support them so that they're not heavily reliant on that outer world. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for your beautiful chapter in Women Leading the Way, and thank you for being here today to chat with us.
Thank you so much, Peace.
Oh, you're so welcome, Sarah, and thank you for sharing so honestly about your journey and your experience.
Thank you.
Because I know that a lot of women go through a hard time with motherhood.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So everyone, make sure you grab your copy of Women Leading the Way. Sarah was our final author who we're chatting with today, but our festival continues. We are here over the next 2 weeks celebrating our book and celebrating our wonderful authors. So thank you so much, and we will see you again very soon. Bye, everyone.